Okay, another round of factoring. So you're going to want to really have these highlighted. Again, you don't have to memorize them. I'm not going to make you do that. But definitely know when and how to use these. So we do have a perfect cube plus or minus a perfect cube. Notice that does not factor. That is not the same as u plus v cubed. Very, very wrong. Very, very, very wrong. For the same reason that these aren't just u squared plus v squared. You got to FOIL this stuff out. You got to multiply, distribute it out. And these are what you will always end up with. So factoring perfect square trinomials, it's really handy to see that we have a perfect square and a perfect square, our first and last terms. So this just ends up being, well, what multiplies to 9x squared? That's a 3x, multiplies to 1. What I would always recommend is check this if you're trying it out. Make sure it actually works out. So 3x times 3x is 9x squared. 3x times 1 is just 3x. So 3x's plus another 3x's gives you 6x. Perfect. And then 1 times 1 is 1. Done. It would be nice, I guess, to write this as 3x plus 1 quantity squared. Go ahead and try part B. See if you can figure that out. Biggest thing is that sign in between. You should end up with the quantity 2x minus 3y all squared. Booyah, there you go. If you have questions, please let me know. Next up, example 2, factoring the sum and difference of cubes. This is really important. We have perfect cubed, and 64 is a perfect cube. It is also a perfect square. That is one of the few that happens for. Be super careful about it. The fact that this is a cubed should lead you to believe that this is also a cube. So this is an x cubed, and this is a 4 cubed, and I am subtracting. So I'm going to use the one from above where I'm subtracting in between. My first item is x. My second item is 4. So that always factors into the first thing, x, minus the second thing, is the 4, times first thing squared, x squared, plus the first thing times the second thing, that's 4 times x, plus the second thing squared. So that's 4 squared. We can write that as 16. That's it. Okay, that's all you need to do. Now down here, a little bit more complicated. You do have to notice that both things are perfect cubes. So 8 is a perfect cube and x cubed is a perfect cube. So 8 is 2 cubed. And we also have the x in there. I can write that whole thing as a cube. Plus, notice I have the plus this time, 27 is 3 cubed. It would be a good idea to start recognizing cubes up to at least 125. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, I would highly recommend that. You should be more or less safe afterwards. Now, let's see. So first thing is this 2x. The second thing is the 3. If you can write it in that form, that should be really helpful. This is going to be equal to the first thing, 2x, plus, because now I have a plus inside, so I'm using the sum of cubes, plus 3 times first thing is 2x squared. Now, I should write that as the whole quantity 2x squared, but I'm going to rewrite that. I don't want to write out a whole other step. 2x squared is 4x squared. 2 times 2 is 4, x times x is x squared. Let's see, then we got minus the first thing times the second thing, so 3 times 2x is actually 6x. And then plus the second thing squared is 3 squared is 9. Boom, that's your answer, that's what I'm looking for. Now, let's see, I'll keep rolling here. Example 3 is factoring a trinomial with a leading coefficient of 1. You guys did a lot of this previously. What multiplies to negative 14 adds to positive 5. Just make sure you have your signs right. That'll be x. I need a minus, so minus and plus. What multiplies to 14 adds to 5. negative 14 I should say, is a positive 7 and a negative 2. Multiply it out if you don't believe me. Remember, FOIL this, you can always check your answer if you're a little unsure. But make sure that you have the signs correct. If you have x plus 7 written first and then x minus 2, that's fine. The order of your factors doesn't matter. Factoring by grouping is a really, really handy trick to use when you have an even number of terms. Notice I have 4 terms here. So what I'm going to do is literally group this by each set of terms. So I have 2 terms here and then 2 terms here. And I'm going to factor each of those separately. So I don't care about this for right now. How do I factor 3x cubed plus x squared? Look for common factors. So hopefully you see that we have an x squared in both of those. If I take that out, you get a 3x. And what happens when you take x squared away from x squared? It's not 0. It's 1. Remember, if you distribute, you have to get back to where you started. So there's always 1 term left over. Now, my goal is to write the same factor. I see a 3x minus 1 here. I want to get that from this as well for this to work. So I'm going to take out a negative 2 because both of my terms are negative and everything's positive here. So I take out a negative 2. What's left is negatives gone, so I've got a positive 3x. Take the negative 2 away from negative 2. Same thing. It's still a plus 1. It did not go away. It's a plus 1. So now I'm actually going to factor again. I have a 3x plus 1 here and a 3x plus 1 here. If I take both of those away, or I should say factor it out from both of these terms, what am I left with? Well, there's an x squared here and a minus 2 here. And that's exactly how you're going to factor by grouping. Now, it's always a good idea to see if you can go further. This is just an x term, so I know I can't go do anything there. I do see an x squared minus 2, but unfortunately the 2 isn't a perfect square, so I can't go any further with that. That is your answer. On to the back, I believe, or yeah, on to the back. Try this one yourself. Pause it for a moment and see what you come up with. I'm going to go through the same process. Hopefully we'll end up with exactly that. And that was done. All right. We're going to keep rolling. Factoring by right trinomial is the leading coefficient is not 1. There's a couple ways you can do this. If you remember the guess and check method, go for it. However, before you even get to that point, there's one thing here that you really, really need to identify first, and that is your greatest common factor. If you don't take it out now, it's going to really mess up things in the future. So there is a common factor of 2 out of all of this. You're left with 14x squared minus 30. Oops, just took the 2 away. My bad. Minus 15x and then minus 9. Okay. So always, always, always take out a greatest common factor. Guaranteed, every time, if you can. Now, here, this is where things might get a little tricky. I do want to factor this, but there's a couple ways to be able to multiply to 14 as well as a 9 or a negative 9. So I have a couple signs I have to worry about. I have a handful of things that it might take me a little bit to do my guess and check. If you're comfortable with guessing and checking and going, oh, it could be a 2 and 7 here, or a 3 and 3, or a 1 and 9, or whatever, go for it. I'm going to show you a concrete way to do this, though, using that factor by grouping. So this will always work no matter what. I'm going to take this first term and this last term. Multiply those. So 14 times negative 9. I'm going to do this off to the side, just a little bit of scratch work. Let's see, 90, that should be 126, negative 126, by the way. Now, I'm going to do what you've been doing with the previous trinomial is look for factors of 126. that add up to your negative 15. So remember, we'd always go, what's the factors of the last number that add up to the middle number? Well, here, I do need to complicate things a little bit because of that 14. Normally it's a 1, and anything times 1 would always be that number. So that's why we were able to do this before. Now we're not so lucky because we got that 14. So what multiplies, or what are other numbers that multiply to negative 126 that add up to negative 15? I'm going to do this pretty concretely. I'd have 1 and 126. There's no way I'm getting 15 out of that. I'd have 2 and, what is that, 63. No way I'm getting any 15, close to 15 on that. I'd have a 3 and a 42. We're getting a little closer, still nothing. Can't divide by 4 or 5. I can divide by 6. That'll be 6 and 21. Ooh, that I can combine to get to a negative 15. Now, the only way to get to negative 15 is if that 21 is negative. So, double check your signs on that, but that's going to work. So, this is the weird part, but it's going to get us to the factor by grouping. I'm going to keep my 14x squared. I'm going to keep that negative 9. But what I'm actually going to do to this 15, or the minus 15x, is split it into these two numbers. So I'm going to split that into a positive 6x and a minus 21x. And I still have my negative 9. If I split it, notice I now have 4 terms, and you can factor this by grouping. So the rest of this should look very similar to what we were doing before. I just had to preface it with a couple steps. So here's my first group. Here's my second group. Got my 2. What's common here? I can pull out a 2x, right? Yeah, so there'll be a 7x and a positive 3. Out of this, I can pull out a negative 3. So there'll be a negative 3 and a 7x plus 3. Okay, I'm going to have to move over. But notice I have 7x plus 3 and 7x plus 3. So they're a common factor, and that's a really good sign. I've just been keeping my 2, my greatest common factor, out front the whole time. So up here, 2 common factors of 7x plus 3 now, times what's left, 2x minus 3. And voila, that is your answer. I'll give you a moment to get all of that down, and then we're on to our last example here. You can do this in the same exact way. I'll show you one more time, just so hopefully you get a little more comfortable with it. So I still have no common factors, because that 7 really throws things off. And there's only x's in these two and only y's in these two. So you can do this by guess and check if you like. I'll show you one more time. Multiply first and last terms. So 3 times 2, that's a little easier, is 6. Now, what times what is 6 but adds to negative 7? Be careful, don't forget. Negative 1 and negative 6 are an answer there. So that will work out. That'll give me 3x squared, and I'm splitting it into each of these. So minus 1 xy's, because that's my middle term, and I'm minusing another 6 xy's. Notice they're like terms. If I combine them, I just get back to that. Plus 2y squared. All right, factor by grouping one final time. Got 3x, let's see, x here and an x. So that's going to be an x is the only thing common. I'll have a 3x minus 1y left over. Now notice my first term is positive, my second term is negative. That's exactly opposite here, so I want to change the sign. So I'm going to take out a negative, and let's see, I can take out a 2 and a y. So if I do that, what am I left with? 3x minus, I took the minus away from the positive, I took 2 and 1y away, so 3x minus y. That's really good, because now these are perfectly the same, or the exact same thing, so I can factor out that common factor of 3x minus y. And what's left is an x minus 2y. So again, that's showing that this will always work out. It's a good idea to really practice that. Let me know if you have any questions.